In this video, I'm going to do a brief overview of the history of supplementation. At the end, you will see that not much has changed with supplements over the past 200 plus years. Watch to the end, it will be well worth your time. Dietary supplements have been around for a very long time. There is some misconception that they are a recent addition to our nutritional health made possible by improved science and technology. The idea that certain components of our food were associated with the prevention and cure of certain diseases was noted as far back as 1550 BC by the Egyptians. There is evidence that they used pills, which is documented on Egyptian papyri. The pills were mixtures of bread dough, honey, or grease with medicinal ingredients added. Herbal remedies, salves, and ointments were also commonly used in ancient Greece and Rome. Although the treatments they used may have contained herbs or other substances with potential value, the efficacy was based on anecdotal evidence. In other words, there were no studies to demonstrate the efficacy of these treatments, just the testimonials of those who used the products. Whenever there is a chance to take advantage of someone's ignorance, history has proven that someone will do it. This is evidenced by the multitude of medicinal remedies that were produced during the 18th, 19th, and 20th centuries. During this time, patented medicines were quite prevalent. These are concoctions made and marketed under a patent. They were available without a prescription, similar to today's over-the-counter medications and supplements. These concoctions were typically marketed as cure-alls for many ailments with exaggerated and unsubstantiated claims. In order to gain popularity, they depended on testimonials and aggressive promotion. One of these concoctions that is still sold today is Carter's Little Liver Pills, although they are now known as Carter's Little Pills. These were patented in 1868 by Samuel J. Carter. He claimed that his pills would cure headaches, constipation, dyspepsia, which is like heartburn, and biliousness. I remember these pills being heavily advertised when I was growing up. Undoubtedly, there were concoctions that did provide some relief for many ailments, but these were overshadowed by the scammers, or as they later became known, the snake oil salesmen. Certainly, these concoctions were not successful without there being a valid need for such things. It was observed by James Lind, 1747, that citrus fruits would effectively treat and prevent scurvy, which was prevalent in sailors. Around 1870, a new technology called roller milling became available for processing flour. This became very popular as it allowed for the efficient separation of the wheat kernel into its components, which are bran, germ, and endosperm. If you remove the bran and germ, the starchy endosperm makes a very fine white flour. The white flour became very popular and was readily available and affordable. Unfortunately, removing the bran and germ also removed most of the nutritional value of the white flour. This resulted in the rise of several diseases from vitamin deficiencies, such as beriberi from thiamine deficiency, pellagra from niacin deficiency, and anemia from iron deficiency. Until the late 1800s to early 1900s, chemistry techniques were not sophisticated enough to be able to isolate molecules from food. About this time, several molecules were identified that were determined to be essential for health. In 1912, Casimir Funk was credited as being the first to make the association between certain molecules and the diseases they prevented or treated. These molecules were considered vital for health and came from the class of molecules known as amines. Casimir made a contraction of these two words and coined the term vitamins. In the early 1900s, vitamins were obtained by extracting them from natural sources. It wasn't until 1933 that the first vitamin was synthetically manufactured in a laboratory. This happened to be vitamin C. Vitamin A was first synthesized in 1947. Unfortunately, it wasn't until the 1930s that scientists started identifying the specific nutrients that were missing in the white flour and their roles in disease. White flour began to be supplemented or enriched in the 1930s, and by 1941, the U.S. and other countries began mandating that white flour be enriched with iron, niacin, thiamine, and riboflavin. In 1998, folic acid was added. Backing up a bit, many of these early concoctions contained chemicals that could be harmful. The first attempt to ensure that these products were safe and reliable occurred with the Pure Food and Drug Act in 1906, which is administered by the Bureau of Chemistry. There were many provisions to this act, but it was generally ineffective. In 1927, the regulatory functions of the Bureau of Chemistry were reorganized into the Food and Drug and Insecticide Administration, which was changed to the Food and Drug Administration, FDA, in 1930. the FDA presented the Federal Food and Drug Cosmetic Act in 1938. It broadened the FDA's authority and required the manufacturers to provide proof of safety of new drugs. Note that this included drugs intended to treat medical illnesses as well as supplements. This tight regulation made it difficult for supplement manufacturers as they had to provide research showing the efficacy and safety of their products. The majority of supplements were vitamins, minerals, and proteins which had already shown efficacy and safety. Any new concoction was met with great scrutiny. The supplement manufacturers got a break in 1994 when the U.S. Congress passed the Dietary Supplement and Health Education Act, or DSHEA. DSHEA basically classified supplements as food. This made it so that unless a manufacturer claimed their product could diagnose, treat, prevent, or cure a disease, they were free to make any claims that they wanted about their supplement. They also did not have to prove any efficacy or safety as long as they used ingredients that were known to be safe for human consumption. At the time DSHEA was enacted, an estimated 600 U.S. dietary supplement manufacturers marketed about 4,000 products. The FDA estimates in 2025 more than 100,000 different dietary supplements are available, with an average of 5,660 new products being introduced annually. Is it any surprise that with the reduced restrictions that everybody and their brothers producing any concoction they can dream of? And best of all, they can make any claims they want and they don't have to prove it as long as they don't claim that their product could diagnose, treat, prevent, or cure a disease. Just listen to the supplement advertisements and you won't hear this disclaimer. Listen carefully. They try to hide it the best they can. Science and our ability to analyze biological processes has greatly improved since the discovery of the first vitamins. Over the past few decades, several vitamins, minerals, and many other molecules involved in metabolic processes have been discovered. Any time that there are such discoveries, someone starts manufacturing a supplement containing that molecule with the claims that it greatly improves the metabolic processes it's involved with. For example, in 1992, because of previous research that folic acid supplementation could significantly reduce the incidence of neural tube defects, the CDC recommended that all reproductive age women consume 0.4 milligrams of folic acid daily. The neural tube affects development of the brain and spinal cord, so this really is a big deal. However, the researchers did not take into account the diets of the women in their studies. They only noted that the supplementation of folic acid had a significant reduction in the neural tube defects. But what was the baseline diet like in these women? When folic acid was mandated to be added to enriched grain products in 1998, wouldn't you know it, folic acid supplements also became available that year. Just having an excess of something doesn't mean it improves the process that it's involved with. It is more likely to interfere with that process. Depicted here is a person in a crowd of people. He is less likely to be able to get to his destination forcing his way through the crowd, i.e. the excess supplements, than if there was an ideal number of people around him. Another example was the discovery that omega-3 fatty acids were a major player in the development of neural tissue. Omega-3 fatty acids are contained in many foods, and recommendations were made for pregnant women to consume more of these food items. The supplement companies, however, jumped on this recommendation and promptly developed and promoted their omega-3 supplements, including, you guessed it, a prenatal supplement. There are many supplements that have been overused for many years. This is especially true of athletes and in particular bodybuilders. There's a prevalent philosophy that more is better. However, after researching supplement use for over 40 years, similar results were achieved by those who simply maintained a well-balanced, nutritious diet. So in the big scheme of things, nothing has really changed over the past 200 plus years except for a few things. Scientific methods have improved to better allow the identification of specific molecules involved in particular processes in our bodies. Manufacturing techniques have also improved, allowing for the manufacture of synthetic versions of these molecules. Government agencies have been developed to provide oversight of these processes to ensure their safety. Unfortunately, there are still those who look to make a buck by deceiving the unwary seeker of better, easier ways to achieve perfect health without significant effort on their part. These manufacturers still claim that their products provide extensive benefits without any or at least unreliable evidence. Their targets are the unwary people who are looking for a quick fix to their problems, or at least to make sure that their diets are healthy because of these supplements. Supplement products are still sold using aggressive advertising and testimonials. P.T. Barnum gave us some insight into supplement marketing practices when he was credited with saying, "There's a sucker born every minute." And Mark Twain warned us that it's easier to fool people than to convince them that they have been fooled. Well, I hope this brief overview helps you to see the motive for the production of so many supplements. Are there supplements that provide benefit? Yes, of course there are. For example, there are people who have absorption problems. They must take large doses of certain vitamins or minerals or some other nutritional components that cannot be absorbed from just eating large portions of foods containing these components. There are several other beneficial uses for supplements that I won't get into now. Just remember that there's no substitute for a well-balanced, nutritious diet. If you like these videos, like and subscribe. I will continue to enlighten you on nutritional information and health and weight loss insights. If you would like to have some help evaluating your diet and nutritional health, check out Straight Shooter Health at www.ss-health.com and schedule a free consultation. Have a wonderful day.